Somebody asked me the other day, "Hey, do you think Kamala Harris is black?" And I said, "Blasian is black." And that kind of shut down the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, I know from a historical position, Southeast Asia has an African presence, an ancient African presence. And there are other places, throughout Asia. China has a ancient, very ancient African presence. Japan has an ancient, very ancient African presence. The Philippines have an ancient, very ancient African presence. Although, in the Philippines, we also have the more contemporary Black presence that happened through the military when some of the Black soldiers started going to the Philippines and having children with the the Philippine women there, and that kind of leads to you. So Blasian is black. Talk a little bit about that, because you have a really intriguing experience that Foxy Brown had, that other people have had, and now it's becoming a central conversation in the ethers.
Yeah. So right when you were talking about the Philippines, my part of my family is from the Philippines and came through the military, particularly after my great grandfather was a doctor in the U.S. Army. He was half black, but if you called him anything but black, he would want to fight. But he served in the U.S. military, in the Army in particular, during World War I. And that's where he met my great grandmother, Filipina. They had the first 4 kids in the Philippines and then the other 3 in the U.S. And so my perspective, when you say Blasian is black, I understand myself as a black person. I might engage in Filipino culture and food and music and so forth, but I guess maybe it's a generational thing, but I don't parse out my identity in such a way where I'm disconnected from my blackness. That I often say that I grew up culturally black, but phenotypically black, Filipino, and a little smattering of slave owner. But for
As we all,
this
as we
conversation,
all are,
yes, as we all are. But
all
this
American
conversation,
blacks, I would say that.
yes, yes, and the fixation, I think, on Kamala Harris being half South Asian, as if that negates her blackness, belies the fact that she participates in black culture. She lives the black experience. The black experience is not limited to, biology. And I think we spend too much time taking on white supremacist notions of the one drop rule, where, why are we embracing this whole idea that, like only one drop of black makes you black, but we don't also talk about the inverse, because white folks don't want to claim our mixed selves. And I think it's a distraction from what has she done to signify her connection to the community. She went to a historically black college. She's part of a historic Divine Nine sorority with Alpha Kappa Alpha. No one in California, at least, thought of her as not black. Now you might have some people who, because of her complexion, might have said, she's one of these high yellow heifers, because that's something that often happens. But even with that, even being a high yellow black person, you're still a black person. You know what I mean? So I just think it becomes a distraction. And I find that because of social media, that people talk real fast and loose about folks' identity without looking at commitment to the community. Because you could have someone who on the other side, Byron Douglas and all those folks and Tim Scott, those are dark-skinned brothers. Are we going to sit there and say they have the same investment in the Black community as Kamala Harris? I don't think so.
Yeah, that is intriguing, particularly when I studied up on her family, and her mother kept her and her sister thoroughly immersed in some of the Black cultural things that was happening in Cali. You know, she was involved in some of the Black Power events. She went to some of the Black Panther rallies. She was involved with some of the Black Power, Black Panther, Black education conversations that were happening in that area. You know, her family did celebrate Kwanzaa in the early 80s. You know, so she has been involved, as you say, in Black spaces as maybe a high yellow, as a biracial, as a mixed, you know, however you want to look at it. I don't think going to a HBCU makes anybody Black. I went to Hampton University. We had Asians, we had whites, a lot of whites from Russia. We had a couple of American whites. We had a number of the Latino students, particularly the Afro-Latino students that were there. And then we had those who were Blasian as well. So I don't think that makes her Black. Being a part of AKA, you're an AKA, right?
No, I'm a member of Sigma Gamma Rho.
Oh, you're Sigma Gamma Rho. Okay. Yeah. I knew you were Divine Nine. For some reason, I was thinking AKA, but I did read in your bio. Yeah, you're right. Well, of course, you know. So salute to the Sigma Gamma Rhos. I'm a Q. My aunt is part of your illustrious sorority, and the sororities do so many great things to our country, for our people, for all people. I just want to salute them. And Sigma Gamma Rho has definitely been on the forefront. But we all know that in our fraternities and sororities, particularly those of the Divine Nine, we do have Hispanics, we have Asians, we have Caucasians. So being a part of a Black sorority, I don't necessarily think makes her Black. But when you put it all together, when you put it all together, she's truly had a Black experience here in the United States.
Yeah, she could have chosen completely. She could have made completely different choices about where she was going to go to school, organization she was going to join, the way in which, you know, if you listen to her when she's doing her speeches, she code switches constantly. And I'm like,
she's a sister. She's a sister, yeah.
Especially when she's
say really it to my face.
Yes. I was waiting for her to say it to my chest, say it with your chest, but you know, hey.
Yeah, I can see that coming out.